Hi, everyone. Good morning. Thank you all so much for making the time to be here today. Again, you've had just the instructions of how to use the Zoom channel. Again, just like most of you, I'm sure we're all learning. I can't tell you all the things I've done with Zoom in the last 2 months, and it's been a massive learning curve for many of us. But it's a really brilliant way. So thank you all for being here, even while we can't see each other see each other in person. But so great work that has been going, and thanks to the Wheel for organizing this. So again, today we're just going to be looking at we'll be hearing from 3 wonderful speakers on their journeys in activism, in their journey in leadership, to explore these 3 different organizations, the work that they've done. So again, we encourage you to please, send in questions or comments, that you might have, but really 3 key and wonderful speakers, again, because I've been involved in community work, in, working with organizations. It is oftentimes a thankless job. You put in a lot, goes into it, and it's, most times you don't get all the thanks, that comes from the amount of work that people do in there. So my name is Ebun Joseph. I'm a career development consultant with the Royal College of Surgeons, and I also lecture Black Studies as well, and a couple of other modules across Trinity College. So I will introduce, so the way this is going to work is I will introduce our 3 speakers together at the same time, and they will all come on for 15 minutes. So each of them will give a presentation for 15 minutes. So while they are talking, a question or something, please do email that question. Or if you need to get clarity, about any of the aspects that they have put, please do that. And then at the end of the 3 presentations, we'll take all the questions at the same time. So our first speaker today, who I will introduce, is Salome Mbugwa. Salome has been the head of operations and strategy with Akidwa since September 2018. She's a researcher, gender equality activist, and human rights advocate with over 20 years experience of working with underrepresented groups, in particular women, children, and young people. She's worked in Europe, Africa, and internationally. In June 2018, Salome was appointed by the Prime Minister to chair the working group on Ireland's 3rd National Action Plan on Women, Peace, and Security. In September as well, 2018, Salome was appointed to the Irish Human Rights and Equality Commission by the President of Ireland, Michael D. Higgins. So again, I mean, like what I've said now doesn't do a lot of justice to all the work that Salome has done. I mean, I've known about, the work Salome has done all the way from Akidwa, and to different advocacy things. And I'm sure, Salome is going to tell us about some of that as well, and also her leadership journey amongst that. Our second speaker today is Veronica Bokeng Akale. She's a board member of the New Communities Partnership, which is an independent national network of more than 150 immigrant-led groups comprising 65 nationalities. They have offices in Dublin, Cork, and outreaches with, across other cities. Veronica is a graduate from UCD with a master's degree in commercial law, and she currently works with Vodafone as a credit controller. So again, Veronica will be telling us her own journey, but also some of the work, that they've done as well. Our third speaker, so we'll be hearing from a third speaker today, and our third speaker is Owaduni Mustafa. Again, we call her Ola. Again, Ola was on one of the panels I ran 2 or 3 weeks ago. She's a fantastic speaker as well, very passionate about the work that she's done. But, Owaduni she's presently seeking asylum. She's a person seeking asylum, living in Direct Provision Center in Ballyhoney, County Mayo. She's educated in political science from Nigeria, but prohibited from engaging in employment. She's committed to give her skills and passion to volunteer for her fellow asylum seekers or people seeking asylum. I don't really like the word asylum seekers. I think when we say that, we give people permission to, to dehumanize, and we group them and we don't see the humans in there. So there are people seeking asylum. And then, she was named the Kristen Buckley Volunteer of the Year 2019 for speaking widely on direct provision system and the experiences of asylum seekers in Ireland. So again, just to say, we have 3 fantastic speakers, here with us today, and we will start with our very first speakers. I really wanted to say, okay, can we put our hands together? But apparently we can't do that on Zoom. So you can just tap on your table. Please, let's welcome our first speaker today, Ms. Salome Mbugua. Salome, if you unmute yourself and show your slide.
I am unmuted, yeah. So thank you so much, Dr. Ebun, and thanks to Will for actually inviting me to speak in this meeting this morning. I think I participated in a few events of the week, but this one is a unique one because I get to talk about my inner experience of my journey, not only in Ireland, but of where I started my activism long time ago. So activism for me and leading to where I am in my leadership role did not start by me coming to Ireland. I've actually been active in Kenya when I was growing up, even in secondary school. I was actually a house captain, and then I joined organizations to work. I worked as a social worker in one of the largest slums in Kenya, and in there I worked with very marginalized women and people who are suffering quite a lot. Myself, I'm so much driven in seeing the inequality and injustice that exist, but seeing things and not actually doing anything has not been my take. I am actually so much determined to work with others to be able to transform their life and to improve their livelihood. So I ended up actually in Ireland in 1994, but before then I had also worked in Uganda as a gender consultant, where I worked with the very deprived women as well. So my experience of working in Kenya with women and my experience of working in Uganda and then coming to Ireland back actually to live permanently in 1998, I felt that I had lost contact with what I was doing before, and I wanted to continue with my activism. And what brought me actually to actually the finding of Aikido itself was my own experience of exclusion and racism. I had lived in the Ireland previously in 1984, where I felt like I was seen as a novelty. So people wanted to talk to me, so I was that different girl who looked different. I actually did line dancing, I did everything, I had so many friends. But then coming back in 1998, even a bank account that I had opened with Bank of Ireland before, which had closed, I couldn't open that bank account. So my experience of the verbal racism as well, and my isolation led me to want to know what other African women were experiencing. I was very much interested to African women because, Africa is a continent which is big, and I could identify very well with African women. So I actually used to stop women in the streets of Dublin, especially in O'Connell Street, because I was excited to see so many people that I can identify with at the time. But in 1994, when I was a student, was very, very different. And the experience is actually, they affirmed what I had been going through. And when I listened to the stories of the first 7 women that I had met, one woman had children who they were living in an apartment near the cinema there in Upper Canal Street. And actually, people used to throw eggs to them and call them names, There was also another woman who was experiencing domestic violence. And another one who's actually the neighbors were opening the hunting dogs, to chase the children. So there were a lot of issues. And another woman had shop in there next to Connolly Station had been vandalized. So when I listened to all these stories, I said, we have to be able to speak for ourselves. Yet that time of 1999, 2000, there were organizations which were emerging to talk on behalf of migrants. And I said, the experiences and our voices are not being heard. We really have to do something. And so I gathered the women in the first time we actually met in Temple, and we didn't actually talk much because in Temple, but we ended up having a drink, and we didn't talk as much, but we did share also about why we are here. We feel like everyone has said, asylum seekers. I don't like that term as well. People seeking international protection, and we had other women who had come here as a student and all that. And so I got in depth to understand what was going on, and we started actually forming ourselves in groups. We met several times. We were meeting actually every other Saturday. Every Saturday we were meeting, and we started taking alternative to meeting people's houses, and we could talk about our experiences. But I felt that we should go beyond the experiences. And I asked the women if it would be good to establish this group format. We actually approached a woman, she was an Irish woman who gave us training on how to form organizations, and we formed Aikido at that time, and we registered Aikido. it was difficult to open a bank account as well. Actually, we had to have the intervention of Sister Joanne McManus, who have passed away now, God rest her soul. But if it wasn't Sister Joanne McManus, we wouldn't have actually opened even that bank account. So there were issues of racism from the very beginning that we were experiencing, and so many challenges that were there that we couldn't get jobs. And most of us, we were young, so we were getting children as well, but these children whom we had come with and that were born here were also getting some challenges in school, and I had to handle a lot of issues and problems. People actually thought this was a group which was very well structured, and many women kept on coming to tell us about their stories and what was happening. But one thing that I did actually, when women spoke about the experiences of racism in the housing estate and the children being harassed in school, what we call racist bullying, I decided actually to go to secondary schools and help is there a problem?
No, yeah, can I ask you, because we're missing some of the things you're saying. So, and it's really important that we get everything. Maybe if you try turning off your video and let's do voice only. Let's see if the volume is going to be better. Because we're missing some of the important things you're saying. So speak again, let's hear.
Yeah, so the thing is that, and I got that, can you hear me? Yeah,
perfect. It's perfect.
Brilliant. So you had me a few more minutes. So what happened was that then I started mobilizing the women, and what used to happen, there were these charismatic churches which were actually starting to come up, and they used to hire halls in Moore Street. So I asked the pastor in the church if he could allow me to deliver training on understanding racism and its impact into the society, so that the women can go to schools to talk about it, and they can go to groups. So actually that was the strategy. Then we came up with leaflets of where we wrote on what we are doing. We are delivering training, we are talking about ourselves and our experiences, and we could go to any meeting, whether it's with the National Women Council or other groups that were there, and these women used to take these leaflets there. So the women were very happy, being able to talk about their experiences and being able to engage into their schools. Unfortunately, in 2004, the women that we had trained in capacity building, through our mobilization, because we had gotten funding from Combat Poverty to be able to reach out to women around the country in the 26 counties. And we hired somebody actually to do this training. But the experience was that, after receiving this training, the women started receiving letters of being threatened with deportation. And this was actually the parent of Irish citizen who had left seeking protection. It was quite unfortunate, and what happened was that, we organized, I called a few people that I knew as allies, and we formed what we call CADIC, the Coalition Against the Deportation of Irish Citizens. 17,000 people were to be deported. We actually organized for campaign, of which actually I initiated myself, and with the help of Dr. Untitled. We organized that, we demonstrated, we held videos, and we did so many things. So to move forward into the obstacles that I have experienced, because I know I don't have a lot of time, there have been a lot of obstacles. You can imagine that I've been working in structures which are, there's a systemic discrimination and structural, actually, racism, which is institutional into it. And that has been very, very challenging for me, because most of the women that I advocate for and that I've been fighting for, they are women who need help to go beyond just the talk, maybe to be able to get their residence and stay in the countries and organize and plan their life. And this actually has to be decided by the state. So what I have done to be able to achieve some of the things that I have achieved even with this structural resistance is actually undertaking research. And if you go to our website of Akido, www.akido.ie, you will see all these researches that we have carried out. I'm only saying it now, the situations of women in direct provision, no place to call home, which was actually the issues of sexual exploitation of women in accommodation center. But in all this, I have learned that, you have to have a lot of confidence and courage, because some of the issues are very much they are very much difficult even to expose, and you're also exposing yourself, and you're also a migrant, and you're seeing in those lenses. So it has been very, very difficult to be able to achieve many things, because at the end of the day, you are not the one who makes the decisions to be able actually to eliminate these inequalities and injustice, whether it's in form of employment, whether it's in accessing services, in particular, even going to maternity hospital and hospitals in general. Women found it very difficult, and still they do find it very difficult to go into that. Some of the other obstacles has been actually the limited opportunities, that it has been very difficult, even after building this organization, which is now a very recognized and very credible organization through my own leadership, because it's a leadership that I have run over the time and I've built over the time. It's very difficult that, you know, we have limited opportunities in terms of getting to talk or even to represent ourselves in situations where we should actually be engaged, because most of the time we are still looked down upon. It's like you've been undermined every time. And so we don't have those opportunities as such to be able to voice and bring these issues to a situation where you can be able to ensure that you are helping to a degree that you would expect. These have actually been a huge problem on lack of resources. You know, we are dealing with women who believe that, you know, the organization is the only place that they can come to and feel comfortable. We have, for example, a lot of sewing machines and computers that we would like to have a resource center, but it's very difficult to get resources even to open that. We are only like 3 staff now at the moment in an organization that is serving more than 5,000 members. It's very, very difficult to be able to achieve things that you would want to achieve, because you want somebody to work on policy, you want somebody to work on communication, you want actually to be able to do something credible and meaningful for the people that you represent. So it has been very, very difficult. It's also very exhausting, you know, time and energy devoted to doing anything. It's quite challenging. But it has been a journey that, you know, we have achieved things that we have achieved. And some of the achievements, you know, that we have achieved within the organization, even with these obstacles, is that we have given a platform to women. I know actually, for example, my speaking and standing up have given so many women courage to talk about the experiences, for example, of racism, of which I have experienced both individual and institutional racism, even being profiled, traveling in the bus and being removed by the Gadi as the only person in that bus, and the bus being delayed for 30 minutes. And I said, you know, I called it, no, I reported it to the Equality Authority. We actually put it in the media, metro media, and, you know, calling these things and challenging them and not keeping quiet. And actually that has been my take, that it has put me to take courage and confidence to be able to stand up and being fearless despite all the obstacles that we meet. I know we don't have time, and I had to answer the questions on, you know, the whole issue of non-profit, you know, the issue of race and non-profit. And here I want actually to say that, you know, it's still very difficult the way we are operating, because, you know, I don't think even the non-for-profit organization have accepted the reality of the change of demographic in Ireland, that we are a country that is now multicultural, that we have people from all over the world living in this small country of ours, and we have to embrace this diversity. So you will find that, you know, even for this non-for-profit, apart from having their staff and how diverse is their staff, that we don't see very well, this also the board and where people should be represented. We also have not only that, but the work you carry on and what you do. So it has been very, very difficult to for non-profits to completely embrace the whole issue of race, and it's still a challenge for Ireland. And I think we have to foster the culture of inclusion. You know, who don't we have in the table? You know, we talk about the 2030 agenda of leaving no one behind, but are the non-profit leaving somebody behind? Who is this somebody? And I would say that most of the migrants in particular, they are not actually carried along when we are hiring or when we are doing our work. And even putting what you put on the paper, does it affect another life of somebody out there? So we have what we call, for example, inheritance of bias. The bias that actually make us fear from engaging the unknown, or people that would feel uncomfortable working for us or working with us or being with us. And we really, as non-profit organization, have to open ourselves to look into what we can do. I want to finally highlight very quickly on what we can do. And actually the very first one I had said, because it links to the non-profit one, what I had said is that, you know, we have to become more aware of our own implicit biases, you know, our attitude and our prejudices towards, you know, people who are coming into this country or people that we are working with. Really, if we want to be able to achieve an integrated society and a society where everybody is embraced and, you know, they are facilitated to become what they want to become, and building those strong communities, it will be very important for each and every one of us, even myself. I have attitude and prejudices that, you know, we should be able to address within our own organization, within our own self, within our own society, that each and every one of us take that responsibility to do that. We also have to understand and accept we are one human race, that we don't have two human races. It's only one human race. And embracing diversity is very important moving forward. We have to become more open, to encouraging people to be part of us and be with us. And I think the non-profit is very much suited for that. But what we have seen, apart from my organization, which is the migrant-led organizations, we have non-profit organizations that don't have migrants. They want to use them as volunteers, but they don't give them jobs. It's very important that they give them jobs, and not only giving them jobs, but also give them promotions at the same time. And this is the only way that we can move forward. We have many researches that have shown that migrants are highly educated. We should actually be able to live with that and live by example as non-for-profit, because we are serving people. And if we have like 12% of the populations are migrants, we have to ensure that our staff are diverse, our governance is diverse, and all those kind of things. I would say that, we have to engage with organizations which are already there and, become allies. In Akido, we are looking for allies. Please join us and work with us. Let's be able to help the women. The woman, actually, yesterday I was talking to a woman who could not get the house. And it's not that because Ireland don't have houses, but there's that discrimination. She had to be taken by an Irish person to be able to get a house. So join us. If that's the way it's going to work for now, before we address the issues with this race, is the person who has a house that they can't give. Please support and help people to be able to overcome some of the discrimination. We've actually heard about so many other bias where employers are using the ethnic bias, that I don't want a person from that country or from that continent or that kind of thing. That really we are the people to set example in the space to be able to help. I know Abun is almost going to tell me to stop, but I want to say that the very final one, we want that, but help us to amplify our voices, but not only our voices. We really want the community and the sector to be able to help us to be seen, so visibility, but also our voices. And you are the only people who can help with that. Myself, I've been recommended by so many people to courses, to many things. And sometimes I even go to conferences and meetings where I'm the only beautiful person, because I don't call myself black anymore, I say beautiful person. And it's very, very difficult when you're in a room and you cannot even say anything. And even if you say anything, nobody is actually supporting that. So please amplify our voices and our visibility. That's what I'll end up with. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Salome, for the, for your presentation today. I just want to apologize, to our attendees today, just for the sound quality. Again, we have to just rely on, the internet and the Wi-Fi coming in, and sometimes it's good and sometimes it's not so good. So apologies for the quality. And you can see we've tried to, just use just the video voice alone. But hopefully, you will get the recording and you can get some of the messages. But that was a really brilliant presentation from Salome. Again, you talked about your own story representation and how your own presence there, when we see you, when a lot of us see you there doing a lot of the work, it is, we talk about if you can't see it, you can't be it, and so sometimes just seeing that Salome is occupying some of those positions is a massive encouragement to young girls, but to also people of migrant descent, of the Black African community in Ireland as well. So really key things, and Salome highlighted a few key points there of what you can do. Again, being aware of our own biases, our own ethnic and racial biases in recruitment. If we don't, if there are no jobs, we can't make those changes. So really key points that, when we're talking about these issues of race and racisms, is about the actions that we take. We've inherited these racisms. What action can we take? Please, let's welcome our second speaker today. And please, if you're online, we don't just want this conversation to be kept in Zoom. Please, if you're online on Twitter or Facebook or LinkedIn, please use the hashtag diverse leadership, so people can follow the conversation of today. So diverse leadership, you can tag Salome, in any of the comments that she's made. You can tag me, or you can tag, some of our speakers, and tag the wheel as well. And please use the diverse leadership. Let's welcome our second speaker today, Ms. Veronica Bokeng Akale.
Hi, everyone. Good morning. Thank you, Dr. Ebun, for this great opportunity. My name is Veronica Akale. I'm a board member of NCP. As you know, as you can see from my profile, that I'm a graduate from the UCD and Currently, I work with Vodafone as a credit control analyst. Now, I became a board member in NCP in 2012. As you know, NCP is a very diverse organization with about 150 migrant-led groups. But as a leader in NCP, I will illustrate my leadership experience and highlight instances where I think racism could be an issue, or make recommendation on how we could make NCP a more inclusive organization. Now, I don't know if everybody can hear me, or should I turn off the video for more sound?
Your sound is coming out okay. I would notify you if there is a problem for now. It's good.
Okay. Okay. So migrants or Africans engagement with policy. I'll look at that first. I find it quite challenging as a leader of a migrant organization to engage with policymakers. First of all, policymakers are meant to engage with us to set up policies that would benefit the migrant community. However, this engagement is very limited, as policymakers always create a barrier which is unknown or unreasonable to us. NCP is a well-established migrant group. However, it is quite difficult to secure funding for some vital projects which are beneficial to the migrant community. This can be quite frustrating and sometimes would lead us to wonder if this is some sort of discrimination or racial something, I don't know. We would like to call on the government officials and stakeholders to be more flexible, to be more accommodating, because on the one hand, they empower us as leaders to lead our migrant communities, to empower them to integrate properly in the Irish community. And on the other hand, it is they make it difficult for us to get funding. The second issue again is all around finances, the financial resource support for migrant African groups. In spite of our size as a migrant organization, we are still faced with challenges like lack of financial resources. As leaders, we are always met with challenges to provide financial support for migrant groups to carry out the functions like celebrating cultural events. NCP is meant to welcome migrants and promote their cultures. However, as a leader, we often met with challenges when we try to lobby between the government and the migrant communities. So stakeholders come across as unwilling to provide necessary support. In some cases, when they eventually approve us funding to carry out a project, this is very limited. By limited, I mean they will give a project, let's say, for 1 or 2 years. And once the funding runs out, then the project comes to an end. The migrant community suffers. How are we meant to proceed? How are we meant to go ahead if this government, who is asking us to empower our migrant people to be more inclusive, to bring people that are willing to help us, and on the other hand, they're unwilling to give us, let's say, long projects to carry on our job? So I'm just a bit confused there. You're asking us to do a job, and on the other hand, you can empower us to do the job. I don't know. Again, one would wonder if this is because of our origin, or is this some sort of racism in disguise? This is a major, major barrier to leadership in NCP, and an area which we need to improve on. We lack financial resources, manpower, collaboration with the stakeholders. All these are issues we need to address. The third point I'm going to address there is a lack of social support for the migrant community. This is a huge challenge to migrant leaders in NCP. If we look at some migrants who have been issued their Irish passport, for example, I'll strike on that. They are always full of enthusiasm. They're ready to include, they're ready to go on to the Irish community. They're ready to integrate into the community. They go on and take courses, get themselves educated, bring their level to a standard. However, once they complete their courses in colleges, they find it extremely difficult to secure a job in Ireland. NCP will support them with CVs, with interview preparation, but they still don't succeed in carrying out their career or pursuit or what their dreams are. Sorry about that. Integration in the Irish community. I don't know why, I don't know if this is due to cultural differences or just racial discrimination. This is a gray area that must be addressed. At the end of the day, we find immigrants migrating to other countries because they don't get opportunities they have always dreamt of in Ireland. This is also a lack, there's always also a lack of social support for migrant women, especially in the job front. It is not very common for us women from Africa to pursue a career but once a migrant woman takes that opportunity, she gives herself the courage to move forward and get a career. And then at the end of the day, she gets frustrated because she can't get a job. She ends up as a counter assistant. You have a master's degree, you have a bachelor's degree, but you are not accepted in the Irish community. I just don't understand. I don't understand what we interpret integration. I don't understand how, on the one hand, the government is asking us to empower people to bring up their standards, to get integrated, to get educated. And once they do that, they can't find their feet in the Irish society. This is quite frustrating, as you find qualified women as counter assistants in Tesco, in pharmacies, and they just can't exhale. The frustration in our organization and to us as leaders, this is quite frustrating. One would wonder if such rejection is because of because they are migrants or just racial discrimination. I would ask government officials and stakeholders, those of you who are online here with us, to provide services in place to accommodate migrant intellectuals. I am a living example. I completed my master's degree there in 2007, and up to date, I haven't been able to secure a job in the legal field. This is quite frustrating, and it's such a waste of time. And at the end of the day, you ask yourself, where is integration in Ireland? Thank you very much.
So thank you so much, Veronica. Again, you can hear some, you've heard, the work of the New Communities Partnership. You've heard of the, great work that they are doing with the migrant community. But you've also heard some of the parallels with some of the things that Salome listed out as well. That lack of the dearth of opportunities. So despite the high level of education, and the willingness of people of migrant descent, African people from the African continent who are living in Ireland, despite, all of their willingness to engage in education and community development processes. You can also hear so much about the lack of social supports, which Veronica, highlights, really, really well as well. The lack of opportunities, recruitment, so again, so key things people have been asking since all of this Black Lives Matter movement started. Everybody's been asking, what can we do? So people who are impacted, who are affected, are actually telling us. So really, we're going to be waiting to see if the leadership from the top, if we're going to be seeing actions. Both Salome and Veronica talked about it as well. Even so many of the groups who are part of the wheel, you are employers as well. So we need to begin to see, how does your organization reflects, and that's what these two speakers have talked about. We're going to welcome our third speaker now. Please remember, if you have questions, please send the questions email the questions to Lucy. Please check in the chat column there. You will see the email address for Lucy that you can email it to. And if you're online and you're tweeting, please use the hashtag diverse leadership. Please, let's welcome our third speaker now, Ola Owaduni. Ola, you can unmute yourself.
Hi everyone. Thank you, Dr. Ebun, for and the previous speakers as well. You've all spoken well. My name is Owodunne Mustafa, and I'm popularly known as Ola. I'm an asylum seeker, and I've been in the system for 6 years. And for the benefit of those who doesn't know what the reprobation system is about, it was a system that was put in place by the Irish government in year 2000 to house asylum seekers for a period of 6 months while they await the decision of their applications from the Department of Justice. But we've seen over the years that that's not the case. I've been here for 6 years, and people often ask, are you fighting deportation? I'm not on deportation. The system is just so slow that you have written to some TDs to try and help me find out what is going on with my case, and they will come back and say your case is still ongoing. You just have to wait it out, and that's the reality of being an asylum seeker in Ireland. What led me to my current role? So I arrived in Ballyhoney in September of 2014, and there was an incident between myself and the manager. We used to go and queue up for food at the canteen then, and one day it was raining, and I had to go and queue for food for my kids. So I asked my neighbor upstairs to look after the kids while I'm gone. And when I was coming back from the dining, it was just about 10 minutes. I overheard the manager on the phone. He was walking fast and mentioning house 15, and that was my house. So I walked up to him and asked, what's going on in house 15? He said, oh, somebody abandoned their child in house 15, and I have to go and have a look at what's going on. And I told him, no, nobody abandoned their kids. Those kids are mine, and I just went to get them food. And he says, oh, we still have to go and check and blah blah blah. And we got home, and he asked my daughter what happened, and she said, oh, my brother changed the station I was watching, and that was why I was crying. And you would have thought that would be the end of this issue. This guy says, no, I'm still going to have to report this as a child abandonment or child negligence or whatever English he used. And I asked him, if I was your sister, would you have done the same thing? And he says, well, you're not my sister, unfortunately, so I still have to report this. And so he did. He reported the incident, and a caseworker was appointed, and she came and spoke with me, and everything died down, but not without me getting a warning of, And so I went around asking people, how have you people been able to survive all these years? And at that time when I came, the people that I met here in the convent had been people that have been in the system for 12, 13, 10 years. So how did you people survive? And they would say, oh, this manager is better than the previous one. Oh, the previous one was better than the previous one. And I found out that the common thing amongst all these people who happens to be single parents, most of them were women, have been, finding their own way of coping with or dealing with somebody that intimidates them or bullies them to silence. You heard people saying, oh, I went to ask for a duvet, and the manager told me, oh, you don't need a duvet, you'll be deported anyway. All those kinds of nasty comments that drives you into a more darker place. And I thought to myself, what can I do to help these women? I was coming from a very bad place myself, and if I came into this country looking for stability and looking for sanity, and what I get in return is bullying and intimidation and being harassed by somebody who feels you can sit on your high horse and intimidate people because this is what you've been hired to do, then there's something wrong somewhere. And so I consulted with some other ladies who I feel were outspoken enough, and we were doing some kind of underground work at that time. And in 2019, we had a call from Mayo County Council asking us if we would like to be a part of the Mayo Day celebration for 2019, and that was the beginning. That was the platform for us to put our voices out there. And after that event, people started coming in to say, oh, we didn't know that people in the reprovision system had this kind of skill. Oh, we didn't know that you people could organize yourselves this way. We didn't know that there was this talent wasting away in the reprovision center. And that's where the dangers of stereotyping and assuming, and all these bias comes in. You see an asylum seeker, you assume, oh, this person came from one disease-ridden part of Africa, or this person came from, is an illiterate, or has no experience whatsoever, or has no value to bring into the country. And the implication of that is people end up sitting and wasting it. We're sitting on their skills and not doing anything. We had a Syrian doctor here in the old convent at some point, and it was here for a good number of years before he eventually got his papers and he moved on. Same way we had nurses, we had teachers who stayed in the system for a long time before getting their settlement. And all these skills are skills that could be useful in the Irish society, as opposed to them just sitting down and just wasting away in the reprovision center. And that led to the establishment of Ballyhoney's inclusion project. And our aim is to encourage people to be proactive while waiting for their papers. And we've been able to organize all kinds of events. We had an intercultural event in Ballyhoney's in July of 2019, and it was well attended. And the most discouraging part was that people from here, who we are trying to create awareness or try to bridge the gap between the people from up the hill and down the road kind of thing, most of them didn't show up. People that came were people who doesn't live in Ballyhoney's. People came from Castlebar, people came from Dublin, people came from Limerick, people came from all parts of Ireland. And our neighbors, who we expected to be our advocate or be our go-to people, most of them didn't show up. But after that, we organized coffee mornings, and it was well attended by people from the local community. We've had different trainings. We've had domestic violence seminar for people who might have suffered domestic violence in their country before coming here and has no support whatsoever. And sorry, that's my son. Go. It's all right. I'm sorry about that. And and we've been able to help people to put their voices out there and not just sit down and just say, I'll just wait it out or continue to wallow in misery. Some of the barriers that I have faced in my own capacity is you show up at an event and people automatically assume, oh, that's one of the charity cases. And it's it is very discouraging and very demeaning, and you kind of what that does for you is it interferes with your own capacity as a person. And the implication then is that instead of sharing your skill and putting your voice out there, it comes across as you trying to prove to people that I'm capable of doing this, instead of you saying, I can do this, and you can see for yourself. And so you have a group of people who are interested in what you're doing this minute, and the next minute they're saying, oh, I didn't feel welcome the other time that I was part of what you did, so I'm not going to be a part of any of your subsequent seminars or whatever training that you are organizing. And another barrier would be language barrier. We have loads of people here whose first language is not English, and they don't so much get involved in what you have to do for them. But in recent years, we've had people who comes in and volunteers their time to teach people conversational classes in English and help them to hold conversations with people, and we've been able to bring them out of their spaces and help them to feel included and integrate into the Irish community. And another barrier would be lack of training. And also in 2015, the McMahon report recommended that asylum seekers should be allowed to work. But the Irish government still says that asylum seekers would be allowed to work, but provided they've been in the country for 9 months and have not had first instance decision on their cases. What that did was that people like me who've been in the system prior to 2016 was not qualified for the right to work. And so all we had to do was volunteer like maniacs and just give our skills for free. And these are things that settled Irish people are doing and getting paid for it. My neighbor opposite my house, I've been here for 10 years, and she bakes and she cooks, and she does all this for free. These are things that she could establish herself and you know, have her own business that she could monetize her skills and be able to take care of her children. But that has not been the case. And the effect of race on non-profit, from my own perspective, is people assume that, especially if you're a Black person, it's even tough. People associate Blackness with incompetence, with illiteracy, with all kinds of, I don't know, all kind of vile assumptions and stereotyping. You get a white guy stands up in the room and a white migrant stands up in the room and is assumed to be an expert, and a Black migrant stands up in the room and is like, oh, okay, she's here. Whatever she's saying has an ulterior motive, and those kind of barbaric assumptions that discourages people from wanting to participate. And I've heard of stories of people who are well qualified to take up roles in different organizations. But then we heard what Veronica said. She has a master's and she can't function in a field of study. I'm currently studying for a second degree in business enterprise and community development, and that was as a result of, I study political science, and I just feel like my prior qualification would not be accepted here in Ireland. So I have to go and study something that would afford me the opportunity to function here. And so I'm studying, and I'm starting my master's in August as well. And another barrier would be that if this idea doesn't come from a white guy, then it's not a welcome idea. You come up with this idea and they assume, oh, we might not get funding for it. Oh, we've done this in the past, it didn't work. Oh, we did this in the past, people didn't really turn up, and stuff like that. But at the end of the day, they rebrand your idea and they go on to execute it, and then you left feeling like, what's in the world is going on? Does that mean I'm a lesser human being? Does that mean that my intellectual capacity differs from what this other person holds, or what exactly is going on? And I think it is high time for government to provide a level kind of a playing ground for people to offer their skills, to offer their expertise, or to offer whatever it is they're bringing to the table. Create seats for migrants, create seats for asylum seekers. I don't want it to be my voice. I can speak for myself. Don't assume that this person needs me to be a mouthpiece. She needs me to speak for her. No, I want you to provide me a platform for me to speak for myself, and not just you speaking for me. No, I'm looking for an Ireland where that barrier would be broken. I want to walk into a room and see somebody that looks like me. I don't want to walk to a room where you have hundreds of white people, and I'm the only Black person there, and you call that diversity. That is not diversity. What I do, I don't ever go back to those kind of platforms, even if I'm offered money for it. I don't go back to it. You cannot say I'm the only Black person that you know. No, I don't believe that. Every person out there knows somebody from an ethnic minority background. You can't say you don't know a traveler. You cannot say you don't know somebody from the LGBT community. You don't know somebody from you know. Let there be an I want to see an all-inclusive Ireland. I want to see a diverse room. I want to see a room where people can come in and we can sit down and say, oh, I'm from a minority background, but I'm here, and I'm here as you as well, and we can share our own ideas and not just rely on that guy there who happens to be a white guy, but from the same qualification as me, but is at an higher pedestal because of his skin color. I want an all-inclusive. I want to see an all-inclusive and a diverse platform. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ola. Again, I mean, I can listen to you forever. She's just, like, she goes with all the passion, and you can just hear the points, just really, really coming out. But our three key speakers, our three speakers today have really highlighted, you know, their own work, their own journeys, and you can hear the challenge. You know, even myself, as somebody working in the field, I tell you the excess challenge that you have to carry on yourself, you know, to do this work, you know. But our speakers have really highlighted key things, you know. Ola says, you know, create seeds, you know. So create those seeds, and that's what Ola, you know, is a call to action. So yes, she's told you her story, she's told you her parts, you know, she's talked about, highlighted, you know, some of the structural racisms within the system, you know, where as qualified as she is, because she came a day before a certain time, she's not allowed to seek work, you know. And so again, and I've written about it and I've published on it. I'm talking about how people of migrant descent, particularly Black workers in Ireland, I have a paper out there, Discriminations Against Credentials in Black Bodies, how you find that people who are Black in Ireland, most of the work we're able to get is unpaid work. And so that really reminds me of that stereotypical big mama image where we take again the labor of people who are Black and we use those labor for free, for the same thing that we pay people for. And that's what Ola has passionately described again today, that is happening, you know, even within the labor market in our island. And we are saying that how can we make a change? People are saying that what can they do? You know, Salome asked the key question, which I highlight for us again. She said, who is at your table? You know, who is on your table? When you call a table, who is on your table? On your personal table, in your office table, you know, in your organization, on your boards, when you call meetings, you know, who is on that table? You know, it's tiring, it's exhausting being the only person there. And Veronica is asking us, you know, social connection. So thank you all so much. Again, there is still time to put in your questions, you know, comments. Some really key questions and comments are in the chat section. So please read through some of those comments and those, questions, you know, that are coming up there. And people are talking about their experiences, talking about, you know, things that we can do. You know, somebody says that a documentary filmmaker and a mother came to Ireland from Romania, you know, again, you know, looking at similar experiences, you know. And that's what happens when you start talking about the experiences of people who are Black in Ireland or the experiences of migrants in Ireland. It just almost becomes like a Me Too thing, because you begin to hear other people coming. But we have a few questions which have been sent, you know, so I would take the first question. My panelists, our speakers, if you grab a quick glass of water. And so for the next 25 minutes, we will go through some questions. Please, there is still time for you to ask your question. And please, if you're tweeting, if you've heard anything important, please put it out there on Twitter or on Facebook or Instagram and use the hashtag diverse leadership. Okay, so our first question today is, for all the panelists, so any one of you can answer it. What are the barriers to diverse and inclusive leadership in the community and voluntary sector in Ireland? And how do we break down these barriers? You know, is there anyone who would like to take this question for us? So the barriers.
I can come in. No, okay.
Okay. Yeah, sorry, I just want to highlight a major barrier that exists in our organization, okay? I'll illustrate this. We as leaders, we want to empower the migrant community to get involved, to get engaged in the Irish community, all right? They come up with projects which are quite interesting, which we encourage them to do, and they do that. And we go and present this project to government, to stakeholders, and they don't give us the funding, and they are not approved. And we as leaders, we feel so ridiculed to go back to the migrant community to tell them, oh, we're sorry, this project has not been approved. You know, the zeal, the enthusiasm, the joy, everything just falls back. So how do we encourage these people? These are the barriers. So we're calling on the government, we're calling on stakeholders to be more accommodating, to be more flexible with us, to accept us the way they said they would. Thank you very much. I don't know if Salome has anything to add.
Yeah, I just actually wanted to say that, and I did say that during my presentations that, there are very limited opportunities. And opportunities is actually even in terms of what Ola was talking about, that people still feel very excluded. I know, for example, in Akido, we've done a lot of training. We've done training African women to represent. We've done a lot of training to help women to build their capacity, their self-esteem, their confidence, to be able to present. But sometimes you don't get those invitations. And for some people, because of their experiences of racism and discrimination, it's very hard for them just to throw themselves into situations or into things. So I think the voluntary sector and voluntary groups around have to be able to open themselves and even to call into organizations, like NCP, Akidwa, to recommend people to be involved in whatever they are doing. So we cannot give excuses that we don't know where we can get them or we don't know them. We have a lot of contacts, that we can recommend to groups, to organizations, to activities and meetings that are going on.
Brilliant. Thank you so much. Again, there are things that we can do, key actions that we can take. We cannot say, we don't have enough or we don't know. Ola, I would direct this question at you. Many organizations work on issues that are universal, health, disability, age, for example. So yet our staff and volunteer base is not reflective of the wider community as it should be. So Salome spoke about the need to recognize our own racial bias. All right. So I think many of us, and this is the person who sent the question, I think many of us are now recognizing that even though we consider ourselves or our organizations non-racist, we are not doing enough to be anti-racist and actively inclusive. How can we be better allies and reach out to those we are currently not connecting with? Ola, would you like to take a... How can they be better allies and reach out to these communities?
I previously did an interview with an NGO, and they were trying to ask questions on why people in the asylum system, like when they come up with programs, why do people not embrace what they bring to the table? And my first response to her was, you cannot assume that what you are presenting to me is what I want. You cannot just assume. So if you're saying you are my ally, are you consulting with me before bringing in your project here? There are sometimes some NGOs they will come up with some kind of program that doesn't fit into what you really want. Like I'll take for an instance, people in direct provision they've been reported to have the highest case of mental health issues. And you are coming in to a direct provision setting with, say, for instance, a computer class. It doesn't fit in anywhere. So what I recommend is, before you assume that you're fighting my cause, do your own research. Consult with these people, ask them questions, and then from like this is what I do as well in Balionis Inclusion Project. We don't just throw something at people because I live here. I don't assume that I know everybody's needs. I send it into our residence group and ask, would anyone be interested in so. And depending on the number of people that responds to what we are planning, that is what determines what we want to do. So don't just assume that, oh, it's a good idea. They will all welcome it.
Okay. Thank you so much, Ola. Again, somebody, Helen Ogbu, thank you for your, I've been seeing some of your comments in the chat. Helen has been giving some really good, advice. Helen says that acceptance and change of mind, is the way forward. I have a book coming out in July, and in that book, I have a whole chapter there, and it's actually from my doctorate from 2015. One of the things I talked about there as the solution for racism and discrimination is to begin to actually teach people how to manage difference. And I talk about acceptance, and I define acceptance, what it is, and just like Ola was saying, I didn't decide it was acceptance. It was the people I interviewed that told me that the major struggle is being accepted, not to be judged, but to be accepted as a true and valid representation of themselves. So we have to keep asking ourselves, does your organization accept people? Are you accepting of difference? Do you judge the difference? When you judge difference negatively, you will perform all the racism and all of those things. When you judge it positively, you will respect it and you will invite it to your table. So the question I'm asking us and you our listeners today is, how do you judge the difference that you see? When you see something, you know, that is different, what is your trigger? What triggers you, you know, to see something as different? And then ask yourself, what kind of judgment have I placed on that difference? That is the beginning. So thank you so much, Helen, for talking about that. You know, Salome, this question is, I would direct this question to you. You know, you were doing pioneering work on anti-racism training in Irish schools in the, 1999 and 2000. You know, so 20 years later, if you were going into schools today, and this is really important because education for us is key, you know, if you were going into schools today, are the same messages still needed, or has it moved on in any way?
I think, and actually we don't do much now. Since those days, we didn't get to do much because like most of the women got their citizenship, and they got, jobs. Even though they don't match their qualifications, they still got something and moved on. And getting somebody to go to these schools have been challenging because you don't get money. The challenge was that, we really wanted to talk about the racism at the time, but the curriculum is the problem as well, because it doesn't reflect into the diversity of people. And even in school, when we have the diversity of pupils, we do not have a way that, the children can identify in any way with either classroom assistant or what they are learning into the school itself. So the debate, I wouldn't say have moved from what we used to provide at the time. And if we are to do it again, it will be beyond what we would have been doing before. But I would like to say that, we have a big role to play in, especially within the education, and it has to start from the preschool. So, from the creches. I was actually one of the directors in Equality Authority from 2007 to 2012, where we learned that, during my time, 1 in 4 children in creches at the time were from mixed background. So we are talking of even the changes that are happening within a society that is changing, not only talking about, Black people, migrants coming from other diverse communities and from other background, but also having children who are born here and from mixed background. They're from an Irish indigenous father and then a migrant mother. So we really need to be able to help them to grow, because identity has also become a huge problem for these children. I think the school has a huge role to play from preschool all the way, not only actually to that level education, but to colleges and everywhere, for people to understand about the issues of discrimination and racism and how they can support those who experience it. Education is the key, and it's magic in helping in our way of perceiving things and moving on.
Thank you so much, Salome. So really, really key, really important. Education. And sometimes we might confuse education and schooling, so schooling is, so schooling has its own place, also education. We, even before the Department of Education hears us and, starts to begin to teach, some of the things that we want, that as parents, as adults, we can educate our children. Many of us are reading now. So one of the 5 top selling books, in the New York Times, are books on racism and anti-racism. So as you are learning, as our audience is learning right now, are you making sure that, the family around you are learning? On your dinner table, are you sharing that information? So that's it, so you've heard today, will you share that with people around you in your office? So again, so really key thing that we are sharing that information as we're hearing it. But yes, we cannot, the Department of Education, if there's anyone connected to the Department of Education, we need them to listen to us. Our children have gone out there, they're on social media, and they're talking about their experiences in our secondary schools, and from our primary schools. So that means that fundamentally there is a problem there already. So we need to make sure that we are changing that education, what we're teaching, how can we begin to teach our children from primary and secondary school how to manage difference, how to be accepting of difference. Let us teach, let us bring, again, we're advocating for African studies, and in universities, but also that, non-Eurocentric views of Africa is taught in our primary school and in our secondary school. Our teacher education, and all the community groups that are here today, you organize events. So you can organize events for African History Month, or African, Black History Month, and do something, to educate your community, on real knowledge, not the one of, starving people and disease-ridden people as the only point of education that we'll see. Thank you from Intercultural Refuge Program, Did I get that right? Intercultural and refugee program. Again, you said something really clearly in the chat box. You know, nothing for us without us. You know, again, Salome and Ola and Veronica have said it clearly. Who is at your table? We must be on the table. You know, and that's the same thing. You know, that comment, you know, there says, you know, nothing for us without us. I have another question here. You know, again, it says, I work in the primary education sector. Would the panel be able to comment on the representation of both pupils and teachers from the migrant community in our school? You know, again, so we're looking at, you know, representation, you know, and yeah, would the panel be able to comment?
Yeah, it's a huge problem actually, and I mentioned it earlier because I even mentioned, you know, in some school you see what we call class assistant. Do we have even class? Because sometimes to become a teacher, you know, there are those guidelines and all things that you have to justify before you can become a teacher in primary school, for example. And I think one of them is the Irish language, if I'm not very wrong. But the problem is that, you know, we do not have a representative in the, you know, the teachers themselves, including those classroom assistants. And also we do not have the reflection of the board. I would actually say that, you know, some people do say we are open to engaging people into our board, but they don't want to come. People don't feel like they are welcome to those boards. And I think it's the responsibility of the schools to ensure that, because we have diverse, you know, students in our school, it will also be important to have diverse board in our school at the same time, because they can add value into the discussions and into the challenges that are presented maybe by the diversity, because also diversity has its own issues. So it's very important that, you know, the teachers, you know, the head teachers and schools take that responsibility to ensure that they have diversity. Let's not even talk much about the teachers, although it's very important, but there are things that we can start immediately, like ensuring that the reflection of the diversity is within our boards and our discussions and the things that we do. Many people are only involved for intercultural activities. I've actually been involved here where I live in Port Arlington, being invited to go and you know, help them in organizing for intercultural activities. I don't want to do that. I want to be in the board and talk about, you know, my experience of my daughter who comes home when she's very sad because of racist abuse, or her experience of not being treated very well by other children, or even to talk about others and bring value into what we can add into those discussions of how can we improve our education or our teaching or anything that is discussed within those boards. So we are very much open to be engaged, and I know other migrants would be very much you know, prepared to engage. Please welcome us. People are ready, and we can start from there, leave alone the teaching itself.
Okay, thank you so much, you know, Salome, for that. Again, you know, I've run a number of webinars, you know, town hall meetings. And I think one of the things that those town hall meetings have done is to actually show the capacity, you know, the abilities of people of, you know, people of African descent in Ireland. I had one panel, they were all young speakers, you know, and they were able to articulate themselves so fantastically. I was clucking like a mother hen when I was listening to these young people talk. So again, so that excuse that they are not people, we have proved that that is not true. You know, again, and today you're here, you're listening to, you know, three amazing speakers again today, you know, and I think that that is, you know, some of the things, you know, some of the barriers that have been put in place. I have this question from someone who's, all the speakers, you know, you can answer. He says, I would like to hear from any or all speakers a bit more about their views on the systemic and structural dimension of your experiences. So it's a very long question, but I would leave it at that. So if you think about, you've explained some of the experiences that you have had, you know, if trying to build the work that you're doing, but also in your own journeys as well. So can you highlight how these, you know, we keep talking about racism, you know, discrimination being systemic. Can you highlight which of the parts of your experiences are systemic?
In my own experience, so the Department of Justice says this set of people can work, the other set of people cannot work. That is, you're already disintegrating and disenfranchising people for no fault of theirs. And then you have centers that have that are self-catering, and then you have other centers that are being treated like prisoners, and they have to queue 3 times a day for food. You have other centers who are organized as a B&B, and they only get fed once in a day. What kind of productivity comes from those kind of people? I'm able to function here because I feel I'm not going to let this system kill me. And I've heard over the years when asylum seekers would say, oh, when you're in the reprovision system, you don't dream because you don't know when that dream will manifest. And I tell them, if you can dream it, that this is what I want to do when I transition outside of this the reprovision center, you can as well start now. Don't wait for this system to overwhelm you, and then you go out there. Rather than getting right at starting with your life, what you have to do first is go into psychotherapy and go into counseling and all these things. So the government itself has a way of institutionalizing people and ensuring that whatever it is you're coming with it doesn't manifest, especially if you are from the migrant background, and this assumption that black migrants are here for the social welfare money. And we've heard politicians use dangerous languages, politicians who have a huge platform that they could have used to provide an all-inclusive kind of thing, or promote diversity and all that. Rather, they use it to divide us more. Like we've heard politicians saying welfare cheats us all. It is not my fault that you said I should sit down and get 38 euros a week when I can go and work for somebody and get paid every week. So all these should be discarded. There need to be a kind of a refreshing mindset and not just prejudge people.
You are muted, Ebun.
Hello.
Veronica?
Yes, I just want to add to what Ola has said there, systemic, yeah. As a board member, if you look at the system, yeah, like I said before, the system is asking us as leaders to empower migrants. And sometimes they do it very haphazardly. They would approve, let's say, they'll approve courses or programs for a year. They'll give us maybe grants for a year or two. And once that grant runs out, the project is frustrated. How do we continue to integrate people without support from the government? That is regards to my leadership. Personally, the system hasn't been fair to some of us, because you come into a country, you want to integrate, you want to work, you think of improving yourself. I went to school, I had my master's degree in 2007. After that, I studied arbitration. I'm a qualified arbitrator. After that, I'm part qualified ACCA. After that, I studied credit management in the Irish Institute of Credit Control. I do all that because I try A, it doesn't work. I try B, it doesn't work. I try C, it doesn't work. So at the end of the day, with my master's degree, all I can do is a credit control job. I don't like what I'm doing, but what else can I do? That's quite frustrating. This system has frustrated me. It has frustrated so many Africans. What can we do? If I've answered your question, I don't know.
Yeah, you have, thank you so much. Salome, I will add this, just hold your response and I will add a question to it for you.
Okay.
Because I know you might be aware of this, just based on all of that. So budget cuts during the financial crisis in 2008 resulted in the dismantling of important infrastructure in the area of integration, including the NCCRI. You remember all of the work they did there? So the National Consultative Committee on Racism and Interculturalism. Okay, so the National Action Plan Against Racism and the position of the Minister of Integration, these have never been replaced. And there is an unmistakable sense that the official focus never returned to that. So the incoming government, must replace this missing infrastructure. So how important is official policy focus on these issues?
Okay, thank you so much, Ebun. But first, going back to the systemic and institutional racism, it's so much embedded in our society. And you know, I like being open because not unless you are open to be able to change things, you cannot. We have actually, you know, laws and policies that in itself they are very discriminative because these actually produce discrimination, which is actually sometimes taken normal. That when you do things, it's like you do them. It's normal the way you do them. Take an example of the police, you know, and the way the Gadi has been dealing with the people, in particular young people, young Black African people that, you know, if they are concentrated, maybe 3 or 5 of them, you know, they'll be chased from the city center because there's assumptions that now they are forming gangs. But also at the same time, you know, the treatment of the police to in particular migrant and people of color. I told you a bus was stopped for 30 minutes for me to be investigated. I was an Irish citizen. I was actually holding an Irish passport, which I didn't have that time, but still because I looked very different. But for them, it was normal. To me, it wasn't very normal. So these things are very systematic. They are very systemic. They are very embedded into our society. And not unless we talk about them, that you cannot give people houses because you don't know them, you don't like them. You know, you cannot give a job because the person comes from this different background and all that. So it's in our policies, it's in our actually practices, the way we do things, and not unless we change that, and it's the most difficult to change when people take it as normal. We should actually look into it seriously as a society moving forward. With NCCRI, NCCRI actually had been established during I think it was John O'Donoghue, time minister at the time in 1998. It lasted only for 10 years because what is the assumptions of that? After 10 years, we didn't have racism anymore. Yeah, but we've been still having racism. So what happened was that, you know, the NCCRI played a crucial role. They did training with the Gadis, which is actually no more there because nobody who have the resources to do that. They also monitored. They monitored and evaluated the issues of racism and actually checked on the reports and all that and did evaluation. They did a lot of training with the groups and many people. And actually people are very comfortable reporting to them because they were examining. And then there was the development of the National Action Plan Against Racism, which looked at the legal, which looked at education and awareness raising, and there were so many things. And actually out of that plan, Colonel Enhan had come up with an idea of establishing African studies, which was supposed to be in DCU. But that up to now has not happened. Why was all this happening? Because it was actually very prevalent that the issues of racism in this country was an issue, but then it was not a priority anymore. And so we are taken back to square zero. And I hope the committee that has come up now to set up the next National Action Plan, that it will be taken seriously. So what we lack in Ireland is political will and commitment, you know, to be able to fight some of these things or to work on some of these things. And we have the opportunity to do these things before we get into worse situations, like in America or UK, that Ireland is in a very better positions if they position themselves to do so. But that will require commitment and political will.
Okay, thank you so much, Salome, again, because I know that, you know, you would have been aware of, you know, all of those issues because we were all here, you know, in the 2008 and all of those conversations, you know, that were taking place, you know. But again, I would just have one last question for our panelists, and if we just quickly, you know, 1 or 2 minutes, you know, to touch on that, but really key important things that we need to begin to look at when we look at racism, the issue of racism, you know. And I think that, you know, Salome, you highlight something, those groups work because, and people could report to them. Why? Because they could see actual actions that were being taken, you know. So if you set up a body or you ask us to come and sit on a committee to help you do the 3 Ds, you know, our diet and our dance and our, you know, our dress, we're done doing that. Like, you know, when people invite me, I'm like, don't invite me if it's about the 3 Ds, diet, dress, and dance. I'm not coming, you know. You know, my dress or my diet or the food we eat is not going to bring integration. There is no integration without work. You know, if people don't have access to the workplace, you know, and all of that. My last question to the panelists today is really around the issue of intersectionality. And I think that it is really important for all the, you know, the community groups, you know, that, you know, we work with, you know, and all of that, because sometimes we work, you know, we're working on this issue. LGBTQ, or we're working on this issue, race and racism, or we're working on this issue, gender. And so people fall through the cracks, because when you're working on gender and you don't include Black women, or you don't include, women with a hijab are not part of the conversations you have, the intersectionality of our lives in community development, in all those different groups fall through. And so people look and say, oh, that's not me, I'm not part of it. How important is intersectionality in all the work we do in community work? Just 2 minutes each. Did I go? Okay.
So from in recent years, we've seen the direct provision system being juxtaposed with the traveler community, and we've seen people write about it, that they've been. We can put these people side by side. We exist side by side. So if you are going to be an advocate for just one thing, and you're going to ignore other people because it's not issues that affect you, then you're not doing any work. So for instance, people would say, oh, asylum seekers are responsible for homelessness. How am I responsible for homelessness? So if you are advocating for an end to direct provision, you should also be able to bring on board the homeless people. You should also be able to bring about that LGBTQ child who has been pushed away or rejected by their family or their friends or whatever. You should be able to bring on board that person who doesn't have the same faith as you, but is being treated as an outcast. We can all bring all these issues together and learn from each other. And I've seen travelers advocates also advocating for asylum seekers and all that. You can't focus your attention on one societal issue and say this doesn't affect this group of people I'm working with, so I'm not going to deal with it.
Thank you so much. Veronica, 1 minute.
Yeah, intersectionalism. I work for NCP there as a board member, and there we are very diverse. We advocate for the migrant community, and it's quite vast. We don't discriminate who we should take care of. So I don't think intersectionalism is something we should do. We need to be very diverse.
Okay, thank you so much. Salome?
Intersectionality is a reality actually in our work in Akidwa, because women are not a homogeneous group. They're coming from different diverse background, and also they have different issues. We have women with disability, including mental health and all that. We also have women who have other issues and many other issues that may not be relevant to all the women in the organization. So they have different experiences. They come in different times, and we actually advocate for intersectionality, even working with women in Ireland as a whole. I know because we've worked with, for example, marriage. We have worked with marriage equality. We've worked with the LGBT in Ireland. It's not that people just everybody in our membership embrace all these issues, but we try to encourage them to look at issues from an equality perspective and how we intersect, with other issues, whether they are for travelers. And even in these issues of racism, I've actually been calling into not leaving behind the travelers, because they've experienced racism for a long time. That if we have to win the battle, it actually have to be a battle that is fought by all of us, and identifying the issues from a broader perspective rather than just looking at it narrowly. So intersectionality is major and is key in our work. And even moving forward as a sector, the non-profit sector, we really need to look into that and see whom we are leaving, in terms of even if we look at the 9 grounds we have in Ireland that explain to us areas of discriminations too.
Thank you so much. Again, so key things that we have talked about today, nothing for us without us. We must be on the table. We want you to look at who is on your table. That's what our panelists, our speakers have told you about. We want you to make sure that you amplify Black voices, amplify migrant voices, really, really important. Our schools, again, a lot of the conversation has been settling around schooling and settling around our schools, the information that we're giving out there, really key. Again, people are asking, what can we do? Let us begin to advocate. We know no more bystanders. We don't want bystanders. There were bystanders on the day George Floyd died. And if all the bystanders acted up, George Floyd will be alive today. So we do not want bystanders. So if you've listened to this today, we're asking you to go back into your space. Don't be a bystander. We're asking you to take action. Some of the comments that I'm reading there, some of them sent to me as well, talking about, our counselors, our guidance counselors in schools, in primary schools, in secondary school, advising, not giving equal advice, to children based on their race, So again, please, when we are occupying a public space, let us know that when we occupy public space, we have a duty of care to treat everyone equally. When we talk about the issue of racism and being a racist or not a racist, it's not a fixed position. We're talking about racist policies. We want you, all the groups that are on here today, check your organization. What are your policies around recruiting, around promotion? Are they racist? What are the ideas, that you have? Your foundation, are they built on racist ideas? When you have board meetings, are they done, on racist ideas as well? So that's the way to question yourself. Question yourself, who is being left out by this policy? Are there the marginalized group? Who is on our table? And that's what our speakers have so eloquently spoken about today. I want to say a really, really big thank you to Veronica for spending the time with us this morning. Thank you so much to Ola Owodunni, and thank you again to Salome, really brilliant speakers, and for contributing here today. We appreciate you spending this time. As we come to a close, Lucy, Emily, I don't know if you want to come back in, or will we just finish?
I mean, we'll finish up, but I'll just come in very quickly to say thank you very, very much to all of the speakers, and thank you to the audience for being so engaged in the chat and with all the questions. That was really, really fascinating. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you,
Dr. Ebun. Thank
you
you for this opportunity. We appreciate it.
And I'm looking forward to meeting you, Dr. Ebun. We've only been able to connect via this space.
Absolutely. We have to, the